Hillary's Homeschooling, Ready to Homeschool 6-month countdown. It's our last video, week 26, art, music, and creativity. You can find the notes for this on www.hilarioushomeschooling.com. I just would encourage you that as we finish out this series, I did not teach you everything about homeschooling. I couldn't, especially because every person who homeschools has their own individual journey to walk, and there's no way for me to predict what that's going to look like for you. Plus, you need to be a lifelong learner and model that for your kids. So as they are learning about academics and the world around them, you are learning about being a parent, being a homeschool figure, a homeschool member of the community, a homeschool mom or dad, all the different things that homeschooling keeps coming out with, new styles, new ideas, new curriculum. So you're going to continue to educate yourself as we go on. I have simply given you 26 categories that you can start from and continue to learn from and build on. So this isn't the end. This is the end of our series, but it's not the end of your learning. I want to start off with Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then going over to Genesis 1:26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. The idea is that we have been made in God's image, and God is a creator. And so we have the immense opportunity to co-create with God. Now, God was able to create something from nothing, and we do not have that exact power. We have to start with stuff. But when we're talking about art and music today, we're talking about the ability to create, the ability to make something new and original that wasn't there before. And so the idea is that we have to take something in order to put it back out. You have to have content in your brain in order to work with it and make it into something new. Now, I know even elephants can create a painting on canvas. Chimpanzees can play music. I mean, you can look at all of those things and say, yes, these other creatures have been given abilities to be able to paint and make music. Okay, that's fine. But what I'm saying is that as humans, we are able to process information in our brain in a way that can help us to put something new out there and convey a message to other people that hasn't been conveyed before. And so as you're teaching your kids all sorts of different things, art and music can be partners in the curriculum. They often get the short end of the stick. If you're busy, that's the first thing to go. School budgets, when they get pressed, oftentimes cut their fine arts programs. Sad to say. Art and music has been seen as extra fluff in our curriculum. But I want to encourage you not to do that. I want to encourage you to find ways to bring art and music into your curriculum, to allow your kids opportunities to experiment with art and music and find ways that they can express themselves using their own creativity as they learn new content. So with all that said, what I want to encourage you to do is to look over my handouts, because I have listed with art on page 1 and music on page 2 all the different ways that art and music can be incorporated into your curriculum or can be a standalone subject. When you're studying art, you can study art as a skill, but you can also study art history and art appreciation and what elements go into art so that they can talk about art in a knowledgeable way. And the same thing with music. You can simply make noise with rhythm instruments or a piano, but you can also start to teach them to appreciate what other people have made in music and then give them the vocabulary that they need to be able to speak about music in a more knowledgeable way. So I'm just gonna skip over my list of all the things that would be art and let you look at those things. But as far as timelines for you, when you have preschoolers, you simply want to give them art materials. Maybe not the messiest ones. Not every preschooler needs to finger paint if you're worried about that going all over your house. But you can have a little art station for your kids. Crayons are pretty easy. Washable markers are fine. Sidewalk chalk outside is great. And glue and scissors and scrap paper. Just giving your kids a place where they can do art for an extended amount of time and not be rushed with the process helps them to start to realize that they have something that they can express and gives them more of a chance of learning to use art materials. In the early elementary years, you want to give them a chance to see what art is. You can take them to museums. You can look at books together that have famous art in them and help them to learn that art vocabulary. One of the big things throughout the years is just giving them time, not rushing them through an art project, but letting them just take their own time on a drawing or a painting. And this is true in music as well, but just giving them time. I put there, avoid identical art projects unless you're teaching a skill. Sometimes we think that we're teaching art to kids, when really what we're doing is giving them directions on how to make a painting or how to make a craft project that's exactly like ours. That's not true creativity. That's giving instructions, and that's teaching them a skill, which is valuable, and I'm not going to say not to do it. But I don't want you to think that then you have completely loosed them up to do art on their own, because they may not still have that gap or that jump or that courage to be able to say, well, I learned how to do this skill with my mom on this project, and now I'm ready to tackle this. There's still a creative jump that has to happen from having the skill to being able to use that skill to make something new. So you can do identical art projects when you're teaching a skill, but don't make that your only art project time. Tell them, here's a blank piece of paper, what do you want to do with it? Or here's some fabric, do you want to sew something? Once they have the skills to be able to make something, then give them the freedom and the time to explore what they could do with that. As they get into their later elementary and middle school years, you can incorporate art into all your other studies. You can put art in history, especially, it fits really well, and geography. But you can also do art projects with science and with English and with music and with math, especially geometry and tessellations. Those fit together really well. And then in the high school and college years, that is when you can start looking at more formal classes. They have the skills, the elementary skills to be able to do art. But if you see some kind of promising spark in your child in the arts, you may want to sign them up for a class with somebody who has a lot of expertise that can guide them in forming that skill and give them creative nudges to kind of branch out and develop their own skill and their own ideas and their own style. And in that way, you would also want to start finding some local artists, people who not necessarily make a lot of money at it, but maybe the retired person down the street has a studio in their home. So if that's the case, maybe make an appointment with them and stop by and bring them a plate of cookies and you can see how they set up their studio and what kinds of things they paint. Just a casual acquaintance like that can help your child feel like they too could accomplish something with their art skills, even if it's not necessarily something that they make money at later in life. It's something that they find enjoyment in. With music, again, I've made a list of all the different ways that you can incorporate music into homeschool, but going through the timeline here, preschool years, just listen to good music together, enjoy it together, and a lot of variety. Don't just stick with one, like your favorite band, but branch out. Sing together. There's so many little kids songs that they would love to learn and sing with you. So find those things and sing together. And then rhythm instruments and piano are great for little kids because they really can't mess up. If you're shaking a tambourine, yes, you can learn to shake it on the beat, but you can also just shake it and have fun. The piano, even though it doesn't necessarily make beautiful noise, you can learn to sit at the piano and just push the keys and listen to the sounds that come out. So your goals later in the elementary years are to go to concerts and musicals. And then one of my favorites for this age is Peter and the Wolf. because it's a musical story about a young boy named Peter who disobeys his grandfather, goes outside the fence and meets a wolf. And then the suspense is played out in the music, and each character in this little musical play is voiced by a different instrument. And so it's a great way for kids to be introduced to the different instruments of an orchestra, and then to listen for the different melodies and harmonies that characterize each of the characters. So Peter and the Wolf is an excellent one to listen to. It's rather long, and you want to be able to let the kids enjoy it. So again, not on a day that you're rushed, on a day that you can relax and just enjoy it. Just sit and listen to it for a little bit with them and talk about the story and talk about the different instruments that they hear. There are old folk songs that go with games, the kinds that we learned when we were really little, like London Bridge is Falling Down. These are songs that they can learn the melody of that's simple, and then if they end up experimenting with an instrument, oftentimes they can start to make those, produce those notes on the instrument that go along with some of those folk songs that have become familiar to them. And then if you could find 3 to 5 songs that they can learn really well, not necessarily on an instrument, singing would be fine, but they learn the words, they learn the rhythm, they learn the melody, and they could sing it anywhere, anytime. Going into the next section, jumping down there, it says, find places for your kids to perform, like the nursing home. I think I've mentioned it in a few videos back that we would take our kids to the nursing home and they would sing for the older folks, which was a very appreciative audience. But it was also a chance for us to practice to perform. And so they had to learn the music and learn the words and then sing them in front of an audience. So that's something that you can start to work towards in the elementary years as well. If you want to have your kid learn an instrument, piano or saxophone or guitar, this is a good time for them to start learning the basics. Violin teachers who use the Suzuki method often start as young as 3 or 4. But usually the child needs to have the motivation as well to be able to keep up with the practice. And so I started piano in kindergarten and took it for 5 or 6 years. There's not necessarily a magic age, but you want the child to be able to have the ability to learn the notes and the musical in notation, but also have the motivation to keep practicing for themselves. And so I put down there, you could do piano, you could do a band instrument, an orchestra instrument. The recorder looks like just a stick with holes in it that they can learn to play. They're pretty cheap. And then there's also a lot of songs that go with history and geography studies where your child can learn a song and it's actually the timeline of events or the names of countries, and they're put to music to help the kids memorize them better. So that is another thing that you can look at doing with music. When you get to the high school and college years, that's when you can look a little bit more about why music sounds the way it does with physics. You can find local musicians, just like you found local artists, and you can even tour a recording studio or learn how to use a soundboard. Sometimes the church that we go to asks our teenagers to consider helping run sound, where they learn how to, raise the volume on microphones and things like that. But that can transfer over later into digital sound manipulation. And some kids, that's what they want to get into. So electronics and amplifiers and things like that. Okay, I have quite a few resources to show you today. Just a reminder that this is only a small sampling of what's out there. Depending on what you choose for your family or how you want to incorporate art or music, you can just Google specific things like, history songs for Civil War era. Okay, well then you're going to be able to find resources that pair songs with the Civil War and be able to supplement your Civil War studies with some of the music from those times. Okay, so let's see here. I'll show you this series first. This series right here is by Mike Venezia, and he's got a whole bunch of different little booklets like this. They're written in a cartoon style, So like very easy for little kids to read, but they also include the actual drawings, paintings, artwork from the different individuals that are studied. And so it's a great introduction for young kids to a variety of artists. And he also has books like this for composers as well, which, I mean, it's hard to put music into a book, but you can start to learn more about the people who have become famous in our world for art and for music. Dover has a whole series of coloring books. They're not very expensive. And, well, this one is called Famous American Paintings. So basically they have the line drawings for what the painting is. And then on the inside covers, they have a color guide. If you wanted to actually draw it or color it the way that it was in the museum, then you could use it to guide you as you do your coloring. For little kids, they might not care about that, but it's a good way for your kids to get introduced to some of the more famous masterpieces of our time. I did not bring down the annotated Mona Lisa, but I do have the Usborne book about modern art. And so you can find collections like this by Usborne or by other ones. I will say you have to be diligent as a parent to look inside the book without just handing it to your kid, because sometimes American art or Renaissance art features nude paintings or nude sculptures. And so if you are shielding your child's innocence at this stage, you may want to consider not giving them those books, just using them for yourself to learn from. Or you can, rip pages out of books. You can staple book pages together. You can post-it notes over different pictures. That's up to you as a parent, how you want to handle that. If you know that your child will simply glance at it and move on, it may not be that big of a deal, and you just be calling more attention to something than it's worth. So that's something to think about. I do appreciate the Usborne books because they talk a lot about the vocabulary of the art world, elements, line, style, that kind of thing. And then they also have full color reproduction pictures that help your child learn more about what the thought was behind some of the paintings. So definitely worth investing in a few art books like this that are full color. Child-sized masterpieces. This is something I wanted to tell you about, but I regret that I did not do more work with it. They come like this. They come in a giant booklet like this that is full color, but you are expected to take the book apart and use a paper cutter to chop up the pages into art cards. So it's a little bit of work on your part as the parent. It comes with a book that explains how to do all of the different activities and games. And so it's worth getting the book along with several of these. You can get different ones that feature different time periods and different levels. But then what you're encouraged to do is put together little folders like this. So you take a file folder and you staple up part of it to make pockets. And then you pull the art cards out, and there's little games and activities that go with it that help your child learn more about arts, famous art and artists from our world. So I like the fact that these are beautiful. They're sturdy. They're actual reproductions of the different art pieces. So it's a great way to introduce younger kids to art, to famous art, and help them to start to notice and distinguish things in the art world. I wish I would have used it more with my kids. It's a great program, and I guess probably we just got too busy. Like I was saying before, art and music is some of the first things to go when you're getting busy. Okay, off the wall museum guides for kids. These are little booklets that you can order. There's several in the series, and they're fun to be able to do before you go to a museum. so that you learn some more about some of the different famous paintings and how to look at paintings and what the artist was thinking about. And this is really good for like teaching the different art vocabulary like we were saying before. Also on this page is Heart to Heart. The pages themselves have art, famous art, but then what they did is they gave different people a few minutes with the art and asked them to write a poem. And so it's a pairing of art and poetry together. So Georgia O'Keeffe would be the famous artist that did the poppy. This is a poem about it, but it's not necessarily a famous poem. It's one that somebody actually wrote while they were studying the art print. So this is kind of an interesting book, and where you compare the creativity of visual art with the creativity of the written word. And so that's kind of a fun way for older kids to learn more about art and to learn more about how to process what they're seeing. Okay. Next page has Come Look With Me. This one also has several in the series, at least 10. They're listed here on the back. So this one is for early American art, and it also has full color reproduction paintings, and then questions to ask your kid as you look at them together. So it's just kind of a way to explore art with younger kids, to look at a famous painting, but then to also ask questions about what might have been, like what animals do you see in this painting? Do you think that the bird perched on the ring is in front, beside, or behind the woman? Visual textures. So it's got a few questions just to kind of help your child start to think about the art and the vocabulary around art. That it also has the background of the painting right here. So it's kind of an all-in-one for parents who want to give their kids an idea. And again, because it is tied in with early America, it fits in perfectly with your history studies that you're doing from that time period. So this is a way to incorporate art with history. I already talked about the Usborne Book of Modern Art. Let's do the music ones. This one is a little book by Scholastic called Musical Instruments. And it's one of those fun ones where, you know, one part is transparent and the other page isn't. So it's fun for little kids to look at. But it also is a great introduction for what musical instruments are and why people use them. Along that line is a story called Pet of the Met. This is just an old book that I found somewhere, but you can find similar books all over the place where, you know, a little mouse is going to go to the Metropolitan Opera. So it's a way of introducing kids to the idea of going to a concert or going to an opera or going to a performance and how to behave and what kind of happened there. Beethoven Lives Upstairs. This is a series that was done to introduce kids to the story of the person behind the music. And then they also were doing a series of concerts in tandem with this across the country. So, you know, this was almost 20 years ago. We had a chance to actually go see Beethoven Lives Upstairs at our local theater with the orchestra playing and everything. And it was geared for kids. So it's just a great series to introduce your kids to some famous composers. And Music and Moments with the Masters. That is this. It's a workbook. And again, I wish I would have done more with it, but I didn't. This is actually like, if you really wanted to get your kids to understand more about music composition in the past, not necessarily their own, but people who have been musical composers in the past and some of their famous songs that they have written. This is a good workbook and curriculum that kind of walks you through how to study that. I wouldn't say you need to know a lot about composers yourself because they do give you information, but this would be one of those things that you'd want to wait with until, like, you know, junior high, when the kids can comprehend this on a higher level as well. And then there's a whole series called An Introduction to the Classics. I haven't even opened this one. It's still in shrink wrap. But this one is 66 minutes, and it is all the story of Hayden. And so what they do is they have a little bit of it's all audio. So you listen, and like a narrator tells you about the man and what his life was like. And then interspersed with that are some of his more famous pieces of music, so that you can listen to the symphonies and the quartets that made him famous, but you also are learning about his life at the same time. So it's an hour. It would require a lot of listening, but it's also a great way for your kids to pass quiet time in their rooms if that is an interest of theirs. I also had this, and I don't think I put it somewhere down, but it's very similar to that. It's Beethoven, The Spirit of Freedom, Classic Composers. It's another series of DVDs that you can buy, and this one has a little booklet in it as well that tells a little bit more about each of the songs that are on the CD and what the setting and background is about those music. So that's a good one too. Vintage hymn books, you can find those all sorts of places. They're helpful. I wanted my kids to actually learn hymns and learn like all 4 verses and know what the songs were and what they meant. So I kind of, I would actually make copies from the hymn book so that we all had the same one and we were looking at the same one. And so the kids would sing and we would sing together. And those are some of the ways that we learn music for nursing homes, but also it would be kind of fun as, if I had taught them a song and then we ended up singing it in church a couple weeks later, they would all kind of like turn and face me and like give me the eye and like, we know this one. It would be so neat to see that the songs that I had introduced them to in homeschool, they were more familiar with, and so they meant something to them in church then as well. We Sing and Cedar Mike Kids, those are also titles that you can look for that have several in the series, and they're just meant to introduce kids to more music and some of the more familiar like childhood tunes. The melody harp, this I brought down. This is something that I didn't invest in until a little bit later in our homeschool, and I wish I had earlier. It's very, very, very easy for kids to use. It's simply set up like a harp. It's got shorter strings at the top and longer strings at the bottom. And then there's all of these cards that come with the set. And so like this is just 2 of them, row, row, row your boat, and eensy weensy spider. And you slide those under, and when they fit properly, they tell the kids which note to strum and how many times. So for row, row, row your boat, you're doing the bottom string. Wow, this one's really out of tune. Sorry. You would need to tighten these things to make them be the right tune. But you just simply go through the song with these 3 notes, then this note, then this note, and it tells you all the way along. Technically, you don't have to strum it right in this spot. You can strum anywhere and get the same note. But this is just a way to show that the song starts here and goes here. And this is the entire song written on one piece of paper that you slide under the harp, and the kids can play a song. So they don't even need to know a lot of musical notation. Notice that there's no staff telling you A, B, C, and the note names, anything like that. There are rhythm on the notes, but just because, the kids know row, row, row your boat, they naturally know which notes need to be longer and which notes need to be shorter. And so they just play it that way, even though, this is a half note and this is an 1/8 note. And they can start to learn that, of course, but that they don't need musical notation to be able to play a song. So this is a really great way to introduce kids to music. And they do have music packs, from all around the world too. So if you wanted to study geography and incorporate some Irish music, you can get an Irish song pack for your melody harp, and they can play Irish songs that they've never heard of before. Again, it's not difficult to do because it's just putting a new paper underneath the sheet and playing it. Okay, I also put in there the recorders, the rhythm instruments, glockenspiels, boom whackers. All of those things can be used by your whole family to explore the world of music. And then the last one is Piano for Quitters and Piano for Life. This is a DVD series that we didn't find until later. And that's going to be true of all curriculum. You're not ever going to find everything right when you want to start. But I would recommend, if your kid is interested in piano, when I learned to play piano, I learned by reading notes on a staff. But my older kids have learned music this way, and it is based on chords and chord progressions, which seems to be a way that a lot of worship songs are written today, is based on being able to play chords. So I would encourage you to look into this series and let your kids learn from him. There's not really a whole lot you as the parent have to do. You just make sure that they have a piano or a keyboard and turn them loose. So I would encourage you to look at that series. It's not very expensive, and it's a good way for kids to learn how to play the piano. Okay, well, that is it. I hopefully have helped you to feel more prepared to teach your own child at home, learning all the different ideas that are out there. And again, there's more to learn. But you are released. You are free. You are ready to go. You are ready to homeschool your kids. Look back over the series for anything that you might want to know more about. And you can email me at the blog. There's a way to contact me as well. If you have more questions or something more that you'd like to have information on, I would love to hear from you. So I wish you the best. I hope homeschooling is a wonderful journey for you and your family, as it has been for mine. Thank you.